Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Shoulders Down. My name is Leah. I am your host. I'm a registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor. And in case you're new here and this is your first episode of Shoulders Down, welcome. This is a podcast about healing your relationship with food and your body so that you can live your most expansive, aligned, and fulfilling life. I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to dive into today's episode. Today, we're talking about 5 ways to rebuild trust with your body. Body trust is foundational to intuitive eating. In order to listen to your body's cues, which is what intuitive eating is all about, you must have a baseline sense of trust in your body. But years of dieting and restricting and harsh self-talk can diminish our sense of trust with ourselves. In today's episode, I'll first share a story about my cats that relates to body trust. Then we'll discuss why body trust is a necessary ingredient for intuitive eating. And I'll also unpack this idea of what does it even mean to win back your body's trust? Like, how are we even separate from our bodies? And what does that even mean? And then I'll give you 5 tools for winning back your body's trust, for rebuilding this trust with yourself. So, as I mentioned, I first want to share a story with you about my cats that I recently actually shared with my newsletter community. So, I'm like semi new to cat motherhood. I got cats like a year ago and I grew up in a strictly dog family. All of that is besides the point, but I felt the need to tell you. Our cats were previously adopted by another family. But a few months into being with that family, the couple split. And so they had to bring the cats back to the adoption center because they couldn't figure out like who got them in the split. So that's important backstory to have. Now, fast forward to this year around Christmas time, my partner Al and I were going to a friend's house for Christmas Eve. We're Jewish, but we got invited to Christmas Eve this year, and we were bringing our cats. They were invited to Christmas also. And we're on the way to my friend's house, which is like a 45-minute drive. And my 2 cats are named Ruth and Murray. I'm obsessed with their names. I think they're so cute. I wanted them to sound like old Jewish grandparents. And so poor little Ruthie, she cried the whole way there. And her brother, Murray, he was a trooper, but he was still on guard. He has these big bug eyes. And every time I looked back at him, he was just like staring bug-eyed through the mesh of his cat carrier. Our 2 kitties were understandably stressed by the uncertainty. They didn't know why they were being loaded into the back of our car in their carriers. They had no idea what was going on. And in that moment, Al, my partner, he said, I hope they don't think we're bringing them back to the adoption center. As I mentioned earlier, since Ruth and Murray were adopted by a couple when they were kittens, and then a few months later returned back to the adoption center when the couple split, it would make sense, since they had that experience in their past, if every time they got into their carriers, they wondered if they were being returned to the shelter. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Leah, what does your cat's semi-traumatic experience have to do with body trust? And that's a good question. And the answer is probably more than you might think. When you have a history of dieting and or restricting in any way, your body lives in constant fear that another diet could be lurking around the corner. This is why it can be so hard to stop eating when you feel full, because your body's like, we got to eat extra to save up fuel in case we're put through another period of starvation. And as a reminder, even if you're not fully starving yourself, your brain perceives any amount of restriction as a threat to its survival. When you decide to leave diet culture, it takes time and consistency to rebuild trust with your body, to show it like, hey, there's no reason to gorge yourself on this food right now. Another diet is not lurking around the corner. The only way that you'll be able to rebuild the trust is by consistently nourishing yourself and honoring your cues over time without going on another diet. Similarly, the only way that our cats, Ruth and Murray, are going to trust that they're not being brought back to the shelter is by us taking them on trips that don't end up at the SFASPCA, which is where we adopted them from. The more time that passes when Ruth and Murray see that going in their carriers doesn't mean that they'll end up with a new family, the more they'll be able to relax and trust us. The more time that passes when you don't go on another diet or lifestyle plan, the more your body will be able to relax and trust you. If you've been on and off diets or restrictive plans of any kind, you'll have to work to rebuild your body's trust. And that's what we're going to get into in today's episode. So I hope you enjoyed that little anecdote about my cats, and I hope it helps to illustrate that our brains and our bodies are really smart and they remember past experiences and they try to use that information to protect us for future experiences. So again, what that means for Ruth and Murray is they're like, oh shit, we like got in a carrier once and then never saw our parents again. And so of course they get nervous and they're trying to anticipate that change every time they get in the carrier. I mean, I'm kind of making this up. Who knows? Maybe they never think about it, but for the sake of the story, you get the point. Similarly, when your body has the lived experience of going on several diets and restriction plans, it is always preparing that that could be around the corner, that and it feels like you have to stay vigilant. You have to think about food all the time, gorge yourself on food in case another period of restriction is looming around the corner. So I know this might feel annoying of like, why am I always thinking about food? Why am I so obsessed and consumed with food thoughts and food noise? And why am I always craving quote unquote unhealthy foods, aka calorie dense, aka energy dense foods? It might seem like your body's betraying you, but your body's actually on your team and it's trying to protect you against the perceived future threat of starvation. This brings us to the next part of this episode, which is why does your body need to trust you? Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about this kind of philosophical question of like, what does it even mean that I'm saying your body has to trust you? Like, is you and your body not the same thing? I had a client say to me once, like, I'm a little bit unclear on what you mean because, like, am I not my body? Like, who is the you and who is the body? And this gets into some philosophical territory. But the way I see it, we are spirits, we are souls, we have energy, however you want to say that. And our spirits, our souls, our energy reside in our bodies. This is how I see it. And so, in that sense, when I say how to win back your body's trust, there's the you, that's like your soul, your spirit, your energy. And then there's your body, the vessel that your soul, spirit, energy lives in. So you, the soul, spirit, energy, is trying to win back the trust of your vessel. And your vessel has its own set of intelligence and wisdom that is inherent in it being a human vessel that has grown cells and extremely complex systems and is the amazing thing that is a human body. But your body stops trusting you, your soul, your spirit, your energy, when it has a reason to stop trusting you. So, in the case of what we're talking about here, its reason to stop trusting you can be from going through periods of starvation or even semi-starvation where you're on a calorie restriction diet or there's certain times of day you're not allowed to eat. These prolonged periods of time where your body hasn't been able to get its needs met as a result of dieting and restricting. So that's what I mean when I say how to win back your body's trust, why your body has to trust you. Like, this is what I'm getting at when I'm saying, like, what is you and what is your body? This is a very philosophical rabbit hole that we could get down, and maybe you see it differently. And if you do, I'd love to hear from you. But this is how I see it, and this is how I found it to make sense best to explain to clients. So, why does your body even have to trust you? Why does this even matter? As I said earlier, body trust is foundational to intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is all about listening to your body's cues and its wisdom. And in order to do that, you must have a baseline sense of trust in your body. Otherwise, when your body says, hey, we're hungry, or like, hey, we're craving carbs, or hey, we need to rest today, if you come from a diet mindset background, which if you're here, you probably do, then it's going to be hard to say, I trust that it's asking for carbs and it's okay to eat carbs, or I trust that my body's asking for rest and it's safe to rest. It's safe to honor that cue that's coming from my body. If we don't have body trust, which diet culture ruins our ability to trust our bodies, because instead of trusting our bodies, we end up outsourcing our eating decisions for, years or decades in some of my clients' cases to a set of food rules, to a diet, to a set of times of day that you're allowed to eat, to all these exterior metrics. And then our body goes, okay, well, I'm gonna just be over here. I guess you're not listening to me. I guess you don't trust me. I don't know if you've ever had the experience where like a friend is asking for advice and maybe you share your thoughts on something and maybe they just like constantly ignore you and like do other things and like it feels like they don't even take your advice into account. After a while, you might kind of throw your hands in the air and be like, I'm not really going to give this friend advice. It's wasted energy, wasted breath. They're going to do their own thing anyway. That's how I see it with our bodies. If for so long we are not listening to them and instead we're listening to exterior rules and metrics, the calorie tracking apps, the point systems, the time of day, whatever it is, then eventually our body goes, well, they're not listening to me. And so I'm going to stop sending these cues. I'm like not even going to do this because what's the point? Like, even when I say we're hungry, even I send the cue for hunger, she's ignoring me because it's not the right time or she doesn't have enough calories left for her app or whatever. So you can get it back. It's like you can get into this groove with your body where it starts to communicate cues with you again and where you start to listen to its cues again. But that's the metaphor that I like to use here is it's kind of like your body's just like, ugh, can't do this anymore. It's a waste of my time and energy. She's not even listening. And so, if we want to be able to listen to our bodies, we need to establish this baseline sense of trust with our bodies of, hey, when you speak, when you send me cues, I'm going to listen to you. I care about the wisdom and the information that you are sending me and the things you have to say metaphorically. I value your wisdom and I'm going to listen to the best of my ability. We need that baseline sense of trust. It's like in a friendship, you can't really be close friends with someone who you don't trust. And it's similar with your relationship with your body. So that brings us to the next part of this episode, which is okay, Leah, I get it. It's important to win back our body's trust. If we've come from this history of chronic dieting, I get it. It's important. How do I do that? It's sort of a vague thing to win back your body's trust. So I have 5 tips for you of how to rebuild trust with your body. We're going to go through them one by one. I'll share the tip and some actionable steps that you can take, and I'll also share why it matters. So, our first tip to rebuild trust with your body is to honor your hunger. When your body asks for nourishment, listen in a timely manner. This might sound simple, but it is the single most important thing you can do to win back your body's trust. Think about it like if you had a little kid and that kid was crying because they were hungry, and you were like, I'm just not going to feed you. That's going to ruin that child's trust with you as in the adult figure of like, my needs aren't met. I can't trust this adult because my needs aren't met when I express them. And so we can think of our relationship with our bodies like a relationship with a child. When that child needs food, we want to, for the most part, try and get it a snack or try to get it a meal in a timely manner so that our body sees you listen to me, you value what I have to say, and you are heeding to my needs. This matters because skipping meals or ignoring hunger cues sends the message to your body that it can't trust you to nourish it. And if it can't trust you to nourish it, and getting nourishment is unpredictable. It doesn't know when it's going to come, when food's going to be allowed, when it's not going to be allowed. This leads to more binge eating and fixation on food because your body's like, okay, we got to gorge ourselves and stock up when we do have the chance because we don't know if we're going to be put through another period of restriction. The way that you can put this into action is to keep snacks around, Keep them in your car, keep them in your desk drawers, keep easy things around in the house so that when hunger strikes, you can honor the hunger in a timely manner. Now, again, this might sound simple, but if you're living in diet mindset and living in the restricted mindset, you probably fear having an abundance of food around. And this makes it hard to honor your cues in a timely manner if your pantry is bare because there's not going to be many choices to honor your hunger cues. So I want you to work on keeping snacks around so that you can respond to hunger cues in a timely manner and work on rebuilding that trust with your body to show it, hey, I hear you. When you're hungry, I listen to you and I try to get your needs met to the best of my ability. The second tip I have for you to regain your body's trust is to practice self-compassion. How can your body trust you if you're constantly bullying yourself and speaking disparagingly about yourself? Why this matters. Negative self-talk creates an environment of fear and shame, which only deepens that trust gap. Again, if we think of a, child adult relationship, or even an adult to an adult relationship, like, are you going to trust someone who treats you like shit, who bullies you, who speaks unkindly to you? No, you are going to trust the kind of person who shows you compassion and respect and kindness. And so, if we want our bodies to trust us, we need to show them compassion, respect, and kindness. Now, this doesn't have to mean of like, I love myself, I am beautiful. No, that can be completely unrealistic if you're coming from a history of self-hatred and self-loathing. What I'm asking you to do is to at least speak compassionately to yourself. So instead of, ew, Leah, you're gross, what's wrong with you? You look disgusting, maybe saying something like, all right, I'm not loving the way I look today. This is really hard. It's not fun. And I see you, body. I see you. You're still worthy. You're still valid. It sucks to not like how you look today. This is a common, universal human experience. Bodies are weird. Some days humans don't like how they look in bodies. You're not alone in this. You're not uniquely broken. It's okay to feel this way. So self-compassion sounds like validating your feelings instead of putting yourself down. It doesn't necessarily mean toxic positivity of like, your body is good, you're beautiful, you're sexy, whatever. It doesn't have to be that. And for many people, if you try to do that, that's going to feel, you're going to call bullshit on yourself. It's going to feel unrealistic. And so it's not going to land. So you don't even have to do that. I'm just asking you, can you bring awareness to the ways that you speak about yourself, even if it's to your friends of like, ew, I'm gross, I'm disgusting, look at all my flab, look at this, look at that. The way that you think about yourself, the way that you maybe the things you say to yourself in the mirror or the things you say to yourself when you're looking at photos of yourself. Can we shift that from a place of self-loathing and self-hatred and this like bullying self-talk and shift it into at least a compassionate response? And a good litmus test for this is, would you say it to a friend? What would you say to a dear friend or your child or your partner, or someone who you really love and care about? If you wouldn't say it to a friend, then it's probably not a compassionate response. The third tip to rebuild trust with your body, to regain your body's trust, is to practice your internal dialogue. Now, what I mean by this is if you have a chronic history of dieting and restriction, then we want to be able to remind your body often we're not going on another diet. We have unconditional permission to eat. No foods are off limits anymore. We want to constantly be reminding your body that it's safe now. Another diet is not around the corner. It can exhale. It doesn't have to be so frantic and so anxious, anticipating another diet around the corner. We're different now. We don't do that anymore. Why this matters. Constant reassurance through these kinds of affirmations will help to retrain your brain to trust its signals, to trust that it's safe, and to trust that another period of restriction is not looming around the corner. The way that we can put this into action is through something that I like to call the and statement. So let's think of an example here. Maybe you are eating something and it's feeling really hard to stop, but you're full. You feel fullness and you're having a hard time stopping. So what it might look like to practice your internal dialogue is something like this. Okay, it feels really hard to stop eating this Ben & Jerry's ice cream right now. That is valid. And I'm working on remembering that I have unconditional permission to eat. No foods are off limits. If I wanted more Ben & Jerry's tomorrow, I could have it because there's not another diet looming around the corner. So there's no reason to gorge myself now because I have unconditional permission, no foods are off limits, and there's not a diet starting tomorrow. Now, the structure of the and statement is identify how you're feeling, validate that it's valid to feel the desire to gorge yourself on Ben and Jerry's because historically it would be ripped out from under you come the next day or come Monday or come the new year or come whenever time that another diet was starting. And we're working on remembering that another diet is not around the corner. We have unconditional permission to eat. These different types of affirmations that we want to remind ourselves of come after the and in the and statement. So I'll say it again. The structure of the and statement is to identify how you're feeling, validate how you're feeling, use the word and to honor that more than one reality can exist at once. And then on the other side of the and, reframe to a reminder to help your brain and your body soften and remember that another diet is not around the corner. Now, this practicing of internal dialogue is going deeper than just I say this thing. Leah said to say this thing on her podcast. Let me say this thing. What it's actually doing on a like brain chemistry level is that it's helping to rewire your neural pathways. If you have been a chronic dieter, restrictor, a person who goes on a plan or says, I'm going to be good on Monday, what happens is your neural pathways, you get these literal entrenched pathways in your brain, like a deeply beaten path in snow that say, okay, we have to stay vigilant because we never know when another diet's around the corner because this is our real past lived experience. And when we do these reminders and these affirmations and we practice our internal dialogue with the and statement, it helps to carve a new pathway, a pathway that says, you're safe now. We don't have to worry. We're not doing that anymore. That's in our past. And over time, the new pathway gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually, that old pathway that caused us to be hypervigilant and always anticipating another diet around the corner starts to overgrow. So this is actually changing your neural pathways and it's actually impacting your brain on a neural chemistry level, which I think is pretty cool. The fourth thing that you can do to work on rebuilding trust with your body is to get rid of diet books, scales, stop following diety social media accounts and consuming diety content. How will your body believe you that you're not going on another diet if you're still actively consuming diet content? Again, why does this matter? Your body can't fully trust you if it's constantly exposed to the messages that contradict your commitment to intuitive eating. So if you're trying to tell your brain, using those and statements of like, it's okay, another diet is not around the corner. We will not do that whole restriction thing again. Yet your house is like littered with, diet propaganda, your food scale, your body weight scale, your diet cookbook about how to make all these keto recipes. And then you go on your phone and your phone is littered with all these different diety Instagram accounts, before and after pictures, all the things, then your brain's going to be like, I don't buy it because there's this diet content everywhere. So I don't trust you that we're actually not going on another diet because you're keeping it all in arm's reach. So if you really want to help your body trust you and to really internalize this idea that it can trust you because another diet is not around the corner because you're working on listening to your cues instead of listening to an outside set of rules or metrics, then it would be really helpful to start getting rid of the physical tools of dieting in your life and also the diet content in your life. And I want to say a side note here, I recognize that it's not always this easy. Like, even if you want to follow all the diet accounts, you might still be served targeted ads on social media. So it's not going to eliminate things 100%, but if you can at least start to make an effort and a commitment to clearing out some of these sources of diet content in your everyday life, it's going to make a really big difference for your body's ability to trust you. Now, the fifth thing that you can do to regain your body's trust, to win it back, to rebuild that trust that you had as a child before diet culture tainted you and severed your body's trust with you, you can work on body respect. Now, you do not have to love your body, as I said earlier, but can you work on respecting it? Respecting it could look like practicing hygiene, regular doctor's appointments, wearing clothes that feel physically comfortable. Why this matters. Respecting your body means taking care of it through, like I said, hygiene, regular checkups, wearing comfortable clothes, and speaking kindly to it. This matters because if we want someone or something to trust us, we need to take care of them. And this is a basic form of taking care of our body. Now, this is often overlooked, like in diet culture, it seems like, health is all about being as skinny as possible, eating as clean as possible, optimizing everything you do. But when I talk about body respect, we're going back to the basics of like, are you practicing regular hygiene? Are you attending your regular checkups? Are you wearing comfortable clothes that help you feel physically comfortable in your body? These types of things that show your body, hey, I care about you. I care about keeping you well and physically comfortable and clean if that is a value of yours. So when I say work on body respect, again, I don't mean you have to love yourself, but can you at least move from, ew, you're gross, what's wrong with you? You're hideous, whatever the sort of bullying part of you might be saying about yourself. Can you move from that self-loathing to a place of self-respect? And we're not just talking through how you speak about yourself. That was more number two, practicing self-compassion. But we're talking about actions. How do you show up in the world for your body? How do you care for your body? Do you show it through, they say actions speak louder than words. Do you show it that you respect it through the way that you treat it? I think about like, I don't know, I'm not really like a purse person, but for whatever reason, that's what came to my mind. Like, if you had a nice, expensive purse, would you let it get all dirty and throw it around and not fix it if there was a hole in it or whatever? No, you would probably work hard to keep it in good condition, to make sure that if it gets like a scuff or something, you might clean it. If it gets a tear, you might try and tend to it, or I don't know, take it to the kind of person that fixed purses, whoever that is. You get the point. You would care for it, you would tend to it, you would try and make sure that it's upkept. This is the same energy we want towards our bodies, to care for it, to tend to it, to make sure that you're upkeeping its different physical needs. So, those are my 5 tips for you to rebuild trust with your body. To summarize, I'll say them so you have them one more time. Tip number one is to honor your hunger. Tip number two is to practice self compassion. Tip number three is to practice your internal dialogue using the and statement. Tip number four is to get rid of the physical tools of dieting in your space and in your social media space. And tip number five is to work on body respect. So if you are wanting to finally leave diet culture and find this peaceful relationship with food where you're not constantly thinking about all the time and you're not in this cycle of self-loathing and restricting and then overdoing it, and you're not constantly thinking about, when we go out to eat, is there going to be something I can have that would be good and clean, and you're not obsessing over food when you're at social events. If you want this life, it is so possible for you, but you cannot have this relationship with food and your body without working on trust. You need to win back your body's trust, especially if you have a long history of dieting and restricting, in order to have food freedom and this peaceful relationship with food, this intuitive relationship with food. I want that for you so badly. I know it's possible for you. I hope this episode helped you with some ideas on how to get started. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend downloading my free Intuitive Eater Starter Kit. This is a free resource that you can get via the link in the show notes or the link below that's going to help you kickstart your intuitive eating journey. It comes with a intuitive eating for beginners guide. It comes with a hunger fullness scale and an activity that goes with it to help you implement it. And it also comes with a short video that explains how to think about hunger and fullness and how to utilize a hunger and fullness scale. It is such a juicy free offering, I have to say. It will really help you get a quick win and start to see what it could really feel like to live life as an intuitive eater. So again, that's my free intuitive eating starter pack. You can head to the link below or the link in the show notes to grab that. And that is all for this week. Thank you for being here. I will see you and talk to you in our next episode.